Hey, this is Mr. Drogemeyer. Thanks for joining me for our Algebra 1 lesson videos. Today we are in Unit 5 looking at lessons 12 and 13 using intercepts to solve problems. So last lesson we talked about how we could use that slope to help us gather information. Today we're going to look at x and y intercepts, how they can be helpful in finding things as well. So this first one says, what are the x and y intercepts of the line 3x minus 15y equals 9? So we first want to recognize that that equation is in standard form, ax plus by equals c. And so when we have something in standard form, we said that we can find our intercepts by plugging in, if we plug in 0 for x, then we can find the y-intercept. If we plug in 0 for y, we can find the x-intercept. So this is for our x-intercept. This is for our y-intercept. So let's go ahead and do that with this equation. So if I plug in 0 for x, so that's 3 times 0 minus 15y equals 9. Well, notice 3 times 0 is just 0, so that really just zeroes out that first term, and I'm just left with negative 15y equals 9. And to solve that for y, I would divide each side by negative 15, and I get that y equals negative 9/15. I could simplify that fraction. Each of those is divisible by 3. So 3 divided by, or 9 divided by 3 is 3. 15 divided by 3 is 5. So negative 3/5 is the y value for our y-intercept. So at 0, negative 3/5, that would be the y-intercept. We're going to do the same thing to find the x-intercept, except instead of plugging in 0 for x, we're going to plug in 0 for y. And so notice that's going to zero out that y term. So negative 15 times 0 is just 0. And so we would just be left with 3x equals 9. Divide each side by 3. And we would get that x equals 3. And so our x-intercept is going to be at the point 3, 0. So those are going to be our x and y intercepts. So in that problem, just having us identify what that x and y intercept would be. In this next one, we're going to use it as a part of answering some questions here. So it says that the distance y from the edge of a glacier to the shore is given by y equals negative 8, or excuse me, y equals 8 minus 0.07x. And so hopefully you're noticing that that is in slope-intercept form, where y is in meters. So that's our distance in meters. X is in years. X is our time in years. So we want to find the x and y intercept here, and then we also want to interpret what they mean. So y-intercept's pretty straightforward in this one. Slope-intercept form, we have our slope being multiplied by the x. The number that's added or subtracted here, which is 8 in this case, is our y-intercept. So we would say that the y-intercept would be the 0.08. Now for our x-intercept, remember x-intercept is going to be the value of x when y is 0. So I'm going to plug in 0 for y, and then solve this for x. Well, I would start by subtracting 8 from each side, which gives me negative 8 equals negative 0.07x. And then to solve for x, I need to divide each side by negative 0.07. And when I do that division, negative 8 divided by negative 0.07, I get x equals, it's about 114. I'm going to round it to two places to 114.29. So that 114.29, that would be my x-intercept. Let's talk about what those mean. So x, it said, is representing the time in years. So the y-intercept is telling us what is the distance from the edge of the glacier to the shore when at time 0. So when we start, it would be 8 meters from the shore. Then the x-intercept is going to be the time, x is time, the time in years that it takes for that glacier to reach the shore, because that means the distance is 0. So y-intercept, the 8 represents how many meters the glacier is from the shore when we start. X-intercept, that's telling us how many years it takes for the glacier to get from that starting point, 8 meters away, to the shore. So hopefully you're seeing kind of how we get to those interpretations. All right, last problem here, we have a table of values. Oops, let me fix that. And it says that this table of values represents a line, and we have x values and y values, and we have a few unknowns. And we want to identify what those unknowns are. And if you notice here, when y is 0, we need to find what x is. So that's going to be our x-intercept. When x is 0, we need to find what y is. That's going to be our y-intercept. And so one of the ways that we could do this is we could use our point slope form. We know it's a line, and so we can find the slope, and then we have a point, we have several points we can choose from on the line that we could use to figure this out. So slope, remember, is going to be the difference between your y values. So let's just choose these first two values in the table. So 12 minus 6, y versus y, or excuse me, y1 minus y2. And then x minus x would be negative 14 minus negative 10. Well, remember, subtracting a negative is the same as adding a positive. So minus negative 10 is the same as adding 10. So 12 minus 6 is 6. Negative 14 plus 10 is negative 4. Simplify here. We can divide each of those by 2. Our slope here would be negative 3/2. So that's our slope. We don't know what the y-intercept is. That's one thing we're trying to find. So we can't put it in slope-intercept form, but we can use point slope form. And that, if you remember, was y minus y1 equals the slope times x minus x1. So m's our slope. Y1 and x1 are values of an x and a y that are on this line. And so I can choose any of those 3 points that I know. Let's just choose this one since it's dealing with a little bit smaller numbers. We got negative 2 and negative 6. So y minus the y value, so y minus negative 6, well, minus a negative again is the same as adding a positive. So y minus negative 6 would become y plus 6. Our slope is negative 3/2. And then we have x minus the x value from that point minus negative 2 would be the same as adding a positive 2. So now I have an equation for the line. I'm going to scroll up just a little bit here. And now I could go ahead and put this into slope-intercept form by simplifying this equation. I'm going to distribute the negative 3/2. So I get y plus 6 equals negative 3/2 times x, and then negative 3/2 times positive 2 That would simplify to -3. And then final step here, I'm going to subtract this 6 to get the y by itself. So subtract 6 from that side. On this side, -3 minus 6, that's going to be -9. So here it is in slope-intercept form. And so that's telling me that my y-intercept, when x is 0, y would be -9. For my x-intercept, I can find that by plugging in 0 for y to my equation and solving it for x. Well, to solve this for x, I need to get the x term by itself, so I'm going to add 9 to each side. So 9 equals -3/2 x. And then to get the x by itself, I need to divide by that -3/2, which is the same as multiplying by a -2/3. All right, and so those are going to multiply to 1, so I'm just left with 1x, or x. -2/3 times 9, that would be -18/3, which would simplify to -6. And so when y is 0, x is going to be -6. All right, you can also kind of see patterns here as well. So here, went down by 4, went down by 4 again, went down by 4 again. This time I only went down by 2. Here it went down by 6, down by 6 again, down by 6 again. Well, the last step here, we were only going down by half as much, so it went down to -9. So a few different ways that you can approach that problem, but just wanted to show you how you can use that to find some of those missing values. All right, and that's all I got for you today. Thanks for joining me. If you have questions, please let us know. Have a great day.